Om Sarvadharma Sthapakasvam Sarvadharma Swarupakaha Acharyanam Mahacharyo Ramakrishna Ayate Namaha. We have been studying Sri Ramakrishna, the Great Master, as the spiritual teacher, second part, but we have gone into beyond that, and within that part, there are 3 chapters dealing with Sri Ramakrishna's Divya Bhava. And first of that chapter, Sri Ramakrishna in the company of devotees for 9 days. The Navayatra in AD 1885. And we understood that Navayatra is the period of double yatra, the beginning of Ratha Yatra and end of Ratha Yatra. For Ratha Yatra, Jagannath Dev goes to his house of his auntie and stays there for 7 days and then comes back. So this total 9 days is called Navayatra. And during that time, Saradananda Swamiji had almost continuous contact with Master. And so, this period he describes where we have seen that to understand Thakur as God, we have to see the bhaktas who understood Thakur as God. So, in the company of devotees. So, that is the description. And we are reading in the last para that devotees felt Thakur to be God. And Thakur loves them, kind to them. So they thought if you want anything, just tell Thakur and it will happen. That example now is given in para 4. Baburam, afterwards known as Swami Premanand, had the desire to have ecstasy. Bhav Samadhi. Because the word Bhav only is going to have significance here. So simply saying ecstasy will not do. And up till now this word, Sanskrit word has come in English. So you can repeat that. We can say, had the desire to have Bhav Samadhi. He went to the master, paraheading. Swami Premananda asked the master importunately for Bhav Samadhi. There it is mentioned. The master's anxiety and vision. He went to the master and said to him importunately, weeping, "Do secure it for me." The master consoled him and said, "Yes, I will ask mother. Does anything happen by my will, my child?" This I understood. Thakur every time distinguishes between Thakur as a person and Thakur's real nature, which is mother. So my will means this person's will. Nothing will happen. It will happen by God's will. So God inside Thakur is called mother. And these Thakurs, every time we get this expression. Constantly. But he scarcely gave ear to what the master said. But the devotees feel identical. Thakur himself is God. The master said, but he scarcely gave ear to what the master said. Baburam repeated the same words. Do secure it for me. A few days after he made that importunate prayer, Baburam had to go to Atpur, his native village, on some business. It was the okay. For some work, we could have said. It was the year 1884. In the meantime, the master was anxiously wondering how Baburam was to have the Bhav Samadhi. In Bengali here, perhaps only Bhav is mentioned. हाँ, अरे मुखस्त हो गए थे लीलाप्रसंग बड़े बड़े. Okay. Here we repeat Bhav Samadhi and then in the next line we shall see. Huh? He said to this person and that person, Baburam wept much and asked for Bhav before he left. What will happen? If he does not have it, he will have no regard for the words of this place, as if something depends upon his belief. He then said to the Divine Mother, please ordain Mother that Baburam may have a little bhav or other spiritual experiences. Bhav tap bole chena. So bhav and other spiritual experiences. The mother replied, Thakur's inside, huh? He will not have bhav. He will have knowledge. Now this is something wonderful. Name Premananda. And we know he was full of love. That is why the name is there. Or Jnana. That means this bhav, how do I understand this? Bhav is a relational aspect of God. God is my mother, friend, etc., etc. That leads to bhav. And knowledge is Advaita relation with God. And that Advaita manifestation is love. How many things we get through this incident? He wanted bhav. And mother replied, he will not have bhav. He will have jnana. Jnana means change of consciousness. Without this outside expression or relation with God. The master was again anxious when he heard those words of the Universal Mother. He went the length of saying to some of us with deep concern, I told mother what Baburam asked for, but she said he will have no bhav, he will have knowledge. Anyway, let him have at least that, so that he may have peace. So, understood? He asked for bhav, he will not have bhav. But if he gets knowledge, he will have peace. His hankering for bhav will go away. He will have something more than that. Bhav is an emotional relationship, and he will have knowledge, and then he will be peaceful. Connect all these things. Anyway, let him have at least that, so that he may have peace. That is all. I was much worried for him. He wept bitterly before he left. So now Thakur also is not worried. How anxious he felt in order that Baburam might have some kind of spiritual experience. Again, while expressing that anxiety, how the master repeated the words, if that does not come to pass, he will have no regard for the words of this place. As if the master's life and all depended on Baburam's regard or disregard. What will happen? Baburam will have loss if he does not retain his faith in Thakur. Nothing will happen to Thakur. But if the devotee loses faith, then he will suffer. The master explained why he felt anxious for the devotees. When Hazara asked him not to be anxious for them, he had a vision and replied to him accordingly. Everything is direct vision. He said now and then with reference to the boy devotees, well, can you tell me why I feel so very anxious for all these and think about what one has realized and another has not and so on? They are mere schoolboys. They are penniless. They are not the means of offering me a piecework of sugar plum. What is sugar plum? Batasa. Schoolboys is said in English. Schoolboys. There, why do I still feel so very anxious for them? If anyone does not visit this place even for 2 days, my heart immediately feels extremely restless to see him and have news of him. Cannot imagine the intensity of God's love for his special sadhakas. Why is it so? The boys who asked perhaps answered, I do not know, sir, why it happened. But it is surely for their good that you feel like that. He understood that it is not for Thakur, it is for his boy. The master said, now he will explain. When he has understood this much, then he will explain. They are all connected things. The reason is this. These are all pure in heart. Lust and gold have not yet touched them. Yet means if the age grows biological, then they could have touched them. If they apply their minds to God, they will be able to realize it. Mine is the nature of a hemp smoker. A hemp smoker does not find satisfaction in smoking hemp all alone. It is necessary for him to hand over the bowl to another. Thakur knows this very well. He was not a hemp smoker, but he has seen hemp smoker. Or from his Bhamuk it has come to another when he enjoys the intoxication. You know, understood this. They will have 2 or 3 puffs and they will hand over that chillum to the other one. And when he smokes, they will feel intoxicated. So it is with me. Although it is so with regard to all the boys, I don't feel so much for anyone as I do for Naren. So everything you understood now. According to the purity, according to the capacity, that person will express spirituality. Thakur's love becomes anxious. It is not partiality, but the functional aspect. If he should be late by 2 days, my heart would feel the pain of being wrung like a toy. Thinking what others would say, I went aside under the tamarisk trees, Javtala, There we have seen, there people used to use Thakur also for going for passing stools. So otherwise nobody goes there. So in front of people, they would say, why is weeping? So Thakur is going there. And wept loudly. Here footnote is given. The tamarisk trees in the north of Rani is Kali temple, as that part of the garden was set apart for answering calls of nature, etc. Nobody went there for any other purpose. And wept loudly. Hazara said, Pratap Chandra Hazara, who had thought about him, he used to live with Thakur. And he was a theoretical dry Vedanti, not understanding Vedanta. Hazara said at one time, what is this strange nature of yours? You are in the state of a Paramahansa. He does not understand, he is much more than Paramahansa. Why do you worry yourself over? Why has Narendra not come? What will happen to Bhavanath? And so on. Bhavanath was Narendra's friend, but later on he married and became too much attached to his wife. Instead of remaining identified with the Divine Lord by applying your mind to Him in Samadhi, then I thought he was right. Ordinary plane of consciousness. He verifies everything by the double thing. Then I thought he was right and that I must not do so again. When afterwards I was coming back from under the tamarisk tree, I was shown by mother a vivid picture of Calcutta, as if the city was present before me, there itself. And all the people were night and day immersed in lust and gold, and were suffering miserably. When I saw it, compassion welled up in my heart. Avatar. I thought, were I to suffer a million times greater misery for the good of these people, most gladly will I do that. That is Avatar. I returned and said to Hazara, I chose to think of them. What is that to you, wretch? Wretch, rascal, or shalak. Swami Vivekananda asked the master not to do so. The master's vision and reply. Again, ordinary plane and superior plane. Naren said at one time, why do you think so much of Narendra? Master used to pronounce in this way, Narendra. If you do so excessively, you will have to become like Narendra. King Bharata continuously thought of a deer and had to be born a deer. You know the story? Jada Bharata. That means in next birth, he remembered all the things. And he behaved as if he is a mood. And then he was full of knowledge. So in between, when the king Bharata was sitting near a river, having renounced Vanaprasthi, renounced his kingdom, and in the forest near a river, one she deer was floating, and she gave birth to a small deer, and she died. So the rishi got, Bharata king got compassion on that deer and brought, and then day and night caring for that deer. So that asakti came. That Narendra is putting on Thakur. Have you much faith in Narendra's words? I was afraid to hear this. I reported it to mother. She said, he is a mere boy. Why do you give ear to his words? That means later on what he will become, that Thakur sees now. She said, you see Narayan in him, therefore you feel attracted towards him. I was much relieved to hear it. I came and said to Naren, I don't take your word seriously. Mother has said that I feel attracted towards you because I see Narayan in you. I will not even look at your face, right? The day I shall not feel his presence. So Thakur's extreme. If you know Narayan, I will not see. So, each action of the wonderful master was strange to us, but had a meaning, and he used to explain it to us, lest we should think otherwise and be harmed. So himself is explaining that. Otherwise, they'll believe like man and not understood and come to harm. The master honored persons of respectability and good qualities. It's a reason. That is because he will go to meet Shashadhar Tarkachuda. We saw the master always value the good qualities of all persons and pay due respect to men of honor. Guner Gunir Kadar, Maner Man. Respectable people give respect. People have qualities, appreciate the qualities. He said the divine Lord is displeased if due respect is not paid to men of honor. Yadyad vibhutimat sattam tattadevavagachattam bhadat mama tejonshesam. They are the special manifestations of God. It is by His power that they have risen to rank and position. It is He who has made them such. Why they are dishonored? When they are dishonored, he is slighted, he is insulted. Therefore, whenever we hear of a man of special good qualities residing anywhere, we find the master eager to see him somehow or other. If the person came to the master well and good, otherwise he would himself go to him uninvited, meet, salute and converse with him. Then thus satisfied he would return. He would judge him how much spirituality has, that we already see. You understood this point? People became great due to spirituality or otherwise. So if they become great, Thakur would see them and judge whether it is with spirituality or not. If due to spirituality, he will retain that. He heard of the special good qualities of Padmalochan, the court Pandit of the Prince of Bardwan, King of Bardwan. Pandit Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Mahesh, the famous Veena player of Kashi. This is not mentioned during pilgrimage to Kashi. In Sadhar Bhav, it is mentioned. Thakur had a desire to listen to Veena. And in Vrindavan, nobody was available. They came to Kashi and they heard of a Mahesh. And then Thakur went to him to listen to Veena. And then he was attracted so much that now and then he came to Thakur and played Veena. That is Mahesh's Veena. The famous Veena player of Kashi. Ganga Mata of Vrindavan was inspired with the spiritual mood of a friend of God. Keshav Sen, the eminent devotee, and innumerable others, whose names might be mentioned, innumerable others, Thakur went. That Bhagavan Das at Kalna. He sought each of them out and himself went to their doors to see them. To what length the master went to free himself from egoism. And he made special practices as a lesson to us. It is of course no wonder that the master went unasked to anyone's door. There never arose in the master's mind such egotistic ideas as I am so great a man, I shall lower myself in the estimation of others if I thus go to any and every man. I will lose respect and so on and so forth. For he had already altogether burnt up pride and egoism to ashes forever. He carried on his head the leaf plates out of which the poor people had taken their food. Understand? That used leaf plate, some servants or somebody threw. Thakur himself lifted. threw them outside the temple and washed clean that place. At one time, he even partook of the livings of those people, regarding them as Narayana himself. That is to realize God is in everybody. Now people imitate this. You have known that in Belur Math there is Narayana Seva. Some devotees come and eat from that. Again, he washed and cleaned with his hair the place where the temple servants answered the calls of nature and prayed earnestly to Divine Mother. Is this correct translation? Oh, there were no shauchalayas in those days. No? It's all right. And Thakur's hair had grown very long. Get an idea of this. He washed and cleaned with his hair the place where the temple servants answered the calls of nature and prayed earnestly to the Divine Mother. Mother, see that I may never entertain the idea that I am superior to them. Therefore, we are not at all surprised to see that extraordinary lack of egoism in him. Though we cry out wonderful when we see others surrendering their egoism even to the smallest degree. About Thakur, we are not surprised because there was no ego. For the Master was indeed not a person of this world like ourselves. The events concerning Dr. Kailash and Trailokya Babu are examples of the Master's lack of egoism. Two incidents he is telling. Throwing the end of the front fold of his lower garment on his shoulder, dhoti, he used to wear half and half on the shoulder, old Bengali style. The Master was once working in the garden of the Kali temple. A gentleman, that name is given in Parak heading, Dr. Kailash. A gentleman thought he was an ordinary gardener and said to him, "Hello, just pluck those flowers for me." The Master did not utter a word, did what he was told, and slipped away from that place. That means more he should not tell, he will come to harm. But when I asked that, he did, and slipped away from that place. Everything is connected. Once the late Trailokya Babu, son of Mathur Babu, became annoyed with Hriday. He drove Hriday out, malum. Hriday, in some mood, worshipped the feet of small daughter of Trailokya Babu. Now, Hriday was a Brahmin and they were all fishermen. So if the higher class man worships lower class people, it will cause harm to that lower class people. That was the understanding. And on that point, Hriday was removed. When the late Trailokya Babu, son of Mathur Babu, became annoyed with Hriday, the nephew of the Master, and ordered him to leave the temple. In his rage, he gave an indication to others, that means Master may go away, that the Master also need not stay at the temple any longer. As soon as this reached the Master's ears, he placed his towel on his shoulder, smiling, and was immediately ready to leave the place. He had gone almost to the gate when, afraid that evil might befall him, Trailokya Babu came up to him and requested him to come back, saying, "I did not mean that you should leave. Why are you going away?" The Master also came back smiling as before, entered his room and sat down as if nothing had happened. Imagine going, coming back. Worldly people behave in a contrary way. Comparison. Many such examples can be given. We do not feel so much astonished at such actions of the Master, though we applaud greatly a man of the world whose conduct remotely resembles this. For we have once for all unalterably settled in our minds, whether we say it in so many words or not, that if we want to live in the world, we must look to our own interest. Elbow out the weak to clear our own path. Proclaim unabashedly our own glory and conceal as far as possible our own weaknesses from others. Contrast total. And this some element is in everybody. That is why he is describing. We think that one will be condemned to become absolutely useless and good for nothing if one is sincere and depends wholly on or believes in God or man. If he does not exert his will, people say he is useless. And it is a thousand pities that the case is the same with politics, social etiquette, individual morals, international policies, and so on. Everywhere, same thing. Even those who have not eaten your dead sea fruit repent, let alone those who have eaten it. That's some English equivalent of dead sea fruit. You know what is the proverb? दिल्ली का लड्डू खाया वो भी पछताया, नहीं खाया वो भी पछताया. We have heard that Delhi ka laddu is something special. And if you are not eaten, we will be repenting. And when we eat, we find it is nothing. So again we will repent. That is what happens in the world. If you do not get glory of the world, we will repent. And if you get, you will find there is nothing in it. Religious movements about the time of the Master's birth, therefore. Now a different subject. Their cause. It was the year 1885. That was a time when the Master had become very well known, attracted wonderfully towards him. Many newcomers came daily to Dakshineshwar then and had the privilege of seeing him and feeling blessed. Everybody, old and young in Calcutta, had then heard the name of the Paramahansa of Dakshineshwar, and many had seen him also. And flooding the minds of the generality of the people of Calcutta, a religious current was incessantly flowing, of course, a little below the surface. ऐसे दिख नहीं रही पर है. The city of Calcutta was then filled with a Harisabha here, a Brahma Samaj there, singing of God's names here, and expounding of religious doctrines there, and so on and so forth. The Master knew well the cause, though others did not. He spoke about it now and then to us, as well as to other devotees of both sexes, because a woman devotee from Saradananda Swami has heard. A woman devotee tells us that one day the Master said to her in this connection, "Hello, know that the many Harisabhas and the other religious institutions that you see are due to this," referring to his own person. Did they formerly exist? Everything had been lifeless, Dharmaglani. But since this, referring to his person again, came, all these have come to life again. And a current of religion is now flowing just a little below the surface. On another occasion, the Master said to us, "Did the young Bengal that you see care for devotion and such other things? They did not even know how to salute with their heads bent. I wish." You understand the modern term? I wish teachers, everybody superior, they only wish good morning. I went on saluting them with my head bent, and then they gradually learned how to bow down their heads in salutation. I went to Keshav's house to see. I saw him sitting in a chair. I saluted him with my head bent. At that, he just gave a nod in return. At the time of leaving later on, I saluted him with my head completely touching the ground. He then folded his hands and once touched his head with them. The more the intercourse between us increased, the more he listened to talks, and the more I saluted him with my head bent, the more did he begin to bow down his head in salutation. Thakur thought like this. Did they otherwise know devotion and such other things, or had they any regard for them? Now comes the actual topic. Pandit Shashadhar came to Calcutta at that time, his exposition of religion. Even the Brahma Samaj called the new dispensation. What is new dispensation? You have to understand a little about Brahma Samaj. Brahma Samaj started by Raja Ram Mohan Rai. The next leader was Devendranath Tagore. He retired, like he went for his solitude. Then the leader was Keshav Chandra Sen. Now Keshav was influenced by Thakur. So his things become too much Indianized. Otherwise they had Western style. So his disciples separated. And they called that Sadhana Brahma Samaj. Now Keshav got still more influenced by Thakur. And he thought Thakur is the ideal for a new dispensation. And he used to salute Thakur as Navavidhan Ki Jai. So that is new dispensation. When the Brahma Samaj called the new dispensation at the company of the master and big congregations were gathering in Calcutta, Pandit Shashadhar came there for the purpose of giving expositions of the Hindu religion and trying to explain the daily religious duties of the Hindus from the standpoint of Western science. Particularly, this sticky, it has electricity, it has this, like that. The saying, as many sages, so many opinions, is always true in all matters. The Pandit's scientific exposition of religion was not an exception to this. It's strange. But in spite of that, there was no lack of an audience. There were great crowds of clerks and others returning from office and of the students of schools and colleges. The Albert Hall, where he used to explain Orthodox Hinduism, was packed with people. Everyone was calm and eager to hear at least a little of the extraordinary exposition of religion by the Pandit. We remember that one day we also stood in that way for some time and heard a few words. On one occasion, we too thrust in our heads with difficulty and had the privilege of seeing somehow the elderly Pandit's beautiful face adorned with a black beard and a part of his breast bedecked with ochre-colored Rudraksha beads. The exposition of religion by Pandit Shashadhar was the one talk everywhere in Calcutta. Two things he has mentioned. For some time he heard and sometime he saw. And in seeing, what speciality you see? Black beard is all right. Rudraksha colored in Gerwa. The master's desire to see Shashadhar. Words travel by ears, as they say. It was therefore not long before the news of the great soul of Dakshineshwar reached the Pandit, and that of the accomplishment of the Pandit reached the master. Some of the devotees came to the master and stated, he is a great scholar and also speaks well. The other day he explained the couplet on Hari consisting of 32 letters to mean the Devi. 32 letters, Hari? Is that Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. 16, next line 16. 16. He explained it in a Devi's meaning. All heard and cried, bravo. The master heard this and said, is that so? I feel like hearing it once. Saying so, the master expressed to the devotees a desire to see the Pandit. Later on, a different version will be given. Swami Vivekananda wanted master to see him because of these peculiar vakyas. The desire that arose in the pure mind of the master was always fulfilled. When any desire arose in the pure mind of the master, it could not but be fulfilled somehow or other. Some unseen power cleared the path to its fulfillment by removing all the obstacles to it. It is true, we heard before, that constantly entertaining sacred and pure ideas in the mind and being always truthful in body, mind and speech, man reaches a state where he can no way have any kind of false idea in the mind. Somebody was asking me this. Even if he makes an effort, Satya Vachan hoya. Whatever desires arose in his mind then become fulfilled in due course. But we could never lead ourselves to believe that it would be possible with a mortal man. We came gradually to believe in it on seeing the desires of the master's mind being fulfilled over and over again in unexpected ways. But in spite of that fact, did we have perfect faith in him during the lifetime of the master? He said, I saw within Keshav and Vijay flames of knowledge flickering like those of lamps. But in Naren I saw the very sun of knowledge. We never believed in those days. Swami Vivekananda himself did not believe. Keshav continued, he has stirred up the world with one power. Naren has 18 such powers in him. Those words were not the expression of the mere thoughts of his mind, they were his experience in ecstasy. But did we even then have perfect faith in them? Perfect faith. Sometimes we thought it may be true. He sees people's hearts. When he says so, there is some mystery hidden in it. Again, sometimes we wondered what a great difference is there between the world-renowned Keshav Chandra Sen, the eloquent devotee, and a mere schoolboy like Narendra. Can what the master has said about them be true? When we had such doubts about the facts of the master's experiences, how can we say that there arose no doubt in our minds about the fulfillment of his desires, which he expressed as simply as we do, I have this desire. The places where the master went on the occasion of the Nava Yatra of the year 1885. Now description starts. The time of Sri Jagannatha's Ratha Yatra chariot festival arrived a few days after the master had a talk about Pandit Shashadhar. It is called Navayatra on account of the chariot festival continuing for 9 days. Many things about the master during the Navayatra of 1885 now arose in our memory. In deference to the etiquette of responding to an invitation, he went to the house of Ishan Chandra Mukhopadhyay, Chantaniya, on the morning of the day of the forward trip of the chariot in that year, and went from there to see Pandit Shashadhar in the afternoon. The master participated in the chariot festival after sunset at Balram Babu's Bagbazar house. On the way, two places, where he spent the night. On the morrow, he came back to Dakshineshwar with a few devotees in a boat. Shortly afterwards, Pandit Shashadhar came to a certain place at Alambazar, otherwise called North Varanagar. Alambazar called North Varanagar. Why this mentioned? Varanagar in those days was between Calcutta and Dakshineshwar. And north means still toward Dakshineshwar. Named Dakshineshwar, it is to the north of Calcutta. To lecture on religion, and from there came to the Kali temple at Dakshineshwar to pay a visit to the master. Afterwards, on the morning of the day of the return trip of the chariot, the master came again to the Bagbazar house of Balram and stayed there delightedly with the devotees for that night, and the following day and night he returned by boat to Dakshineshwar on the morning of the third day with Gopala's mother and some other devotees. This Gopala's mother is yet to be introduced to us. Now the name has come. On the day of the return chariot trip, Pandit Shashadhar came to Balram Babu's house to see the master and dissolved in tears, prayed to him with folded hands. My heart has dried up by discussing philosophy. Please endow me with a drop of devotion. In Thakur's influence on Shashadhar, the master entered into ecstasy and touched the Pandit's heart that day. It will not be out of place here to give in detail an account of the events of that time. About Ishan Babu, first of all. Ishan is the name of Shiva. In the morning, when the chariot started, the master, it was mentioned before, came to Ishan Babu's house at Tantranya in Calcutta. Chariot started. Chariot festival started. This has become too literal. Rather Din. On the first day of chariot festival, in the morning of the first day of chariot festival, chariot does not go for 7 days. The master, it was mentioned before, came to Ishan Babu's house at Tantranya in Calcutta. With him were Yogen, Hazara, and a few other devotees. Rarely does one meet with a devotee, kind and liberal like Ishan. Having so great a faith in God, his 3 or 4 sons were all educated. The third son, Satish, was a fellow pupil of Narendra. As Satish was a great expert on the Pakwas, the sweet voice of Narendra was very often heard from that house. He wants an accompaniment. Again, I thought some katka. 8 sons he had. Tar atti putra sakale kruta vidya. So, 3 or 4 sons have there. All his 8 sons were educated. The third son, Satish, speaking of the kindness of Ishan Babu, one day Swami Vivekananda said to us, it was by no means less than that of Pandit Vidyasagar. Vidyasagara was famous for other things together. The Swami saw with his own eyes Ishan Babu give on many occasions the whole of his own meal of rice and other preparation, there being no other food ready at home, to beggars and go practically without. That is the main thing. Pinching air yourself, if you do something, then that is real that. The Swami said that he saw Ishan Babu shedding tears many a time at others' suffering, the removal of which he found was beyond his power. Ishan was not only kind, but equally devoted to japa. Many of us knew that he practiced japa from sunrise to sunset regularly at Dakshineshwar, Purasharan, that is. He was very dear to and a favorite with the master. After finishing his japa one day, Ishan came, we remember, to offer his salutation at the feet of the master, who in ecstasy placed his holy foot on Ishan's head. When afterward the master regained normal consciousness, he said emphatically to Ishan, "Oh Brahmin, dive deep." That is, this happens on the surface, Purashchara. That is, be absorbed in the name of God instead of practicing japa superficially. Ishan japa and morning worship at that time continued till 4 in the afternoon, normally. When he took a light meal, he spent his time till sunset in talking with others or in listening to devotional songs, and then sat for his evening japa for several hours. His sons took upon themselves the responsibility of looking after his worldly affairs. The master blessed Ishan's house now and then with his holy presence. Ishan also during his stay in Calcutta came to see him at Dakshineshwar very often, or went to the sacred temples or place of pilgrimage and spent his time in practicing austerities. On the day of the chariot festival this year, 1885, the master came to Ishan's house and had a talk on religion with some scholars of Bhatpara. Bhatpara in Calcutta is known for scholars. Swami Vivekananda said that Pandit Shashadhar was staying in the neighborhood. On hearing that, the master went to see him that day. The Swami had come to know that the Pandit was in Calcutta, for he was already acquainted with those at whose respectful invitation the Pandit had come to lecture on religion, and frequented their college street house, some devotee's house. Again, as the Swami was convinced that the Pandit's figurative exposition of religion was full of errors, he came a little more frequently to that house with a view to reason it out to the Pandit. Swami Brahmananda says that he, Swami Vivekananda, knew many things about the Pandit and told them to the master, who at his request went with him to see the Pandit and gave the Pandit much valuable instruction on that occasion. The master told the Pandit during his very first visit to him that if one makes an attempt to preach religion without having the badge, the power of authority from the mother of the universe, it becomes fruitless and increases one's pride and egoism and sometimes leads one to ruin. It is needless to say, as a result of these glowing, powerful words, that the Pandit gave up preaching a little later and went to Kamakya Peeth to practice austerity. Kamakya, you know, no? Near Guwahati in Assam. Swami Yogananda's devotion to establish rites and practices. Devotion to means Nishtha. The master took leave of the Pandit that day and went with Yogen to Balram Babu's house at Bagbazar in the evening. Yogen was then so much devoted to establish rites and practices that he did not take even water in anybody's house. He therefore took light refreshments at home before he came with the master, who on his part also never requested him to take food anywhere. For Yogi's devotion to establish rites and practices was not unknown to him. He knew also that Yogen used to take fruits, milk, sweets, etc. in Balram's house, because Balram Babu, Yogen found, had love and devotion to God and reverence for the master. Therefore, a little after his arrival, the master said to Balaram and the others, "He, Yogen, has not taken anything today. Please give him something to eat." Balaram Babu took him lovingly to the inner apartment and gave him a light meal. We mention this here as one of the examples of how great was the master's observation of the mental and physical conditions of the devotees, although he was often absorbed in ecstasy. There flowed a ceaseless current of bliss in the company of the master during the chariot festival at Balram Babu's house. Immediately after sunset, the holy image of Jagannath was adorned with garlands, sandal paste, etc., and brought out from the shrine in the inner apartment. It was placed on the small chariot, already bedecked with cloth and flags, and was worshipped again. Sri Fakir, who belonged to Balram Babu's priestly family and was a devotee of the master, performed this worship. What is the name? You know, Yadneshwar Bhattacharya. Nickname was Fakir. He was priest in, because he was a Brahmin, so he was priest in Balram's house, and he was a tutor to Balram's children also. When studying at school, Fakir, who devotedly conformed to religious practices, lived under the care of Balram Babu and looked after the study of the latter's only son Ramakrishna. He had great devotion to the master from the day he first saw him. The master loved to hear hymns, etc., recited by him. One day he taught Fakir how to recite properly the hymn to Kali by Acharya Shankar. At sunset on that occasion, the master took him to the northern veranda of the room in which he stayed, touched him in ecstasy, and asked him to meditate. Diksha, Shambhavi Shakti Diksha. As a result, Fakir had wonderful visions and other experiences. So, Chariot Festival on Monday. We'll have 3 days leave now. Holi, Dhuli, and Sunday. So we'll have next class on Monday, 20. Om Sarvadharma Stapakastam Sarvadharma Swarupaka Acharyana Mahacharyo Ramakrishnaya Te Namaha. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. नीचे रखो इसको फ्लैट है ना और ये मुंडे इसको अंदर रख दो